There's a story about a tablet called K3127, supposedly held for decades in British museum storage, describing an experiment the god Enki performed on human tears nearly 4,500 years ago, complete with a working microscope, a substance found in no other species, and a translator who kept the discovery mostly secret until his death. I want to be very direct about this one from the start because it does something worth naming clearly. It builds its most important character, the translator, around an explicit admission that his name is fictional. I will call him Dr. Howaren. That isn't his real name, and then gives that fictional person a detailed, specific biography anyway. An age, a death year, a daughter who holds his manuscript. Private conversations he supposedly had. When a story tells you up front that a name is invented and then keeps building realistic personal details on top of that admitted fiction, that's worth recognizing as a technique for borrowing the feeling of a real, verifiable source without actually providing one. No translator matching this description, no manuscript, and no tablet cataloged, as K3127 with this content can be found in any public museum record or academic publication. Let's separate the real material from the invented material carefully, because there's real science tangled up in this one, and it deserves to be represented accurately rather than swept into the same pile as the fictional tablet. Here's what's genuinely real. There is real, published biochemistry research into the difference between emotional and reflex tears. Tears you produce from feeling something versus tears produced by, say, cutting an onion. This research, associated with the biochemist William Fry in the 1980s, found that emotional tears do contain higher concentrations of certain compounds than reflex tears, including a natural pain-relieving substance called leucine enkephalin, the stress-related hormone ACTH, and prolactin, a hormone associated with bonding and lactation. This is real, replicated science, and it's genuinely interesting on its own terms. You don't need an ancient tablet to make it worth knowing. There is also a real modern art and photography project called Topography of Tears, created by the photographer Rosalind Fisher, who photographed her own dried tears and those of volunteers under a microscope, and found that the dried residue formed different visual patterns depending on the emotional circumstance of the crying. This is real, it's been exhibited and published, and it's a genuinely striking body of work. It's worth being fair about what kind of evidence this actually is, though. It's an art and photography project, not a controlled scientific study with blinded classification of tear type from pattern alone. The patterns Fisher photographed are real and visually compelling, but treating them as a rigorously validated, reproducible scientific signature for each specific emotion overstates what the project itself claims to demonstrate. Now, the invented material. There is no evidence anywhere in the archaeological or Assyriological record of a Sumerian description of a compound microscope. This would be an extraordinary claim on its own, and extraordinary claims need real, checkable sourcing. A described apparatus using 2 lenses and a light source to magnify a biological sample requires optical technology, specifically ground glass or crystal lenses with specific curvature, that has no supporting archaeological evidence anywhere in the Mesopotamian record. The earliest confirmed lenses and magnification devices appear millennia later, and their absence from the vast, well-studied Mesopotamian archaeological record isn't an oversight. It reflects that the technology didn't exist there. A description this specific and this technologically advanced, attributed to a single uncatalogued tablet with no corroborating parallel anywhere else in Sumerian literature, is a sign of invention, not discovery. The final detail, a 12th passage written in a script that does not match any known writing system, ancient or modern, is worth naming as a storytelling device rather than evidence. A genuinely undeciphered ancient script would be one of the most significant findings in the history of linguistics, publicly documented and intensely studied by specialists. A claim like this, offered with no image, no published analysis, and no name of a single linguist who examined it, isn't a mystery being reported. It's a mystery being manufactured, precisely because it can't be checked. I want to name the ending of this piece directly too, because it's worth recognizing as a technique on its own. The narration closes by repeating "sleep well" 3 times, immediately after establishing that an unidentified, possibly non-human substance is being produced by you personally every time you feel something. A device meant to leave real unease with the person watching after the video ends, similar to the direct address technique we've flagged in an earlier script in this series. That's worth being honest about rather than replicating uncritically. It's constructed to produce a lingering, personal unease, not to report a documented finding. There's also a recurring theme worth naming again here, since it's come up across this series. The story builds toward humans possessing something the gods did not put there, implying an authority above the Anunnaki deliberately gifted humanity a hidden trait the Anunnaki themselves don't understand or control. As with the other tablets we've discussed, a narrative built around hidden, non-human powers deciding, monitoring, or being surprised by what's inside human beings sits in tension with a straightforward Islamic understanding of creation. That Allah made Adam directly and gave humanity everything we possess, including our capacity for feeling and emotion, by direct design and full knowledge, not as an accidental discovery that startled a council of lesser beings. So, where does that leave us? With real, worthwhile modern science, genuine biochemical differences between emotional and reflex tears, and a genuinely striking photography project examining how dried tears look under magnification, wrapped in an entirely invented ancient tablet, an admittedly fictional scholar given a false biography anyway, an anachronistic microscope with no archaeological basis, and an undecipherable script that conveniently can't be checked by anyone. It's worth adding one final point of honesty. The real tear research doesn't need any of this. The fact that your body responds to grief, joy, and fear with measurably different biochemistry, and that this shows up even in something as simple as a dried teardrop, is already remarkable. It doesn't require a 4,000-year-old warning or a secret Sumerian experiment to be worth your attention. It holds up perfectly well under its own, real, citable sources. We're not here to tell you that an ancient tablet describes Enki inventing a microscope, discovering an otherworldly substance in human tears, or that an undecipherable script is hiding a secret. What we can tell you with confidence is that real biochemistry shows measurable differences between emotional and reflex tears, that a real photographer has documented how dried tears look different depending on emotional state, and that the specific tablet, translator, and undeciphered script described here don't correspond to anything in the real historical or academic record, including, importantly, the translator, whom the story itself admits from the start isn't a real name. If this kind of thread interests you, William Frey's actual tear research and Rosalind Fisher's real photography project are both genuinely worth looking into directly. Real, citable, and remarkable without anything invented layered on top. Your body really does respond differently, chemically, to grief and joy and fear, down to what's in a single teardrop. That part is true, and it's already enough to sit with. It doesn't